nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Commission. If you have a mission or if you have a matter to discuss that is not included in the agenda, you may do so by addressing the chair, giving your name and address. All the meetings are audio and video recorded in accordance with the open meeting laws. Visitors are welcome, and we allow 5 minutes per person and 15 minutes per topic. Discussions will be held in a common civil manner, and you will be respectful of others. Planning Commission members present are Peter Greenbush,
Marta Miller,
Aldi Fetty.
Sheila Lawrence.
Dave Salva.
Dan Pavlik.
Jim Thompson.
Is there going to be any adjustments of items on the agenda? Perfect. Hearing of visitors. We'll wait for them. Anybody else? Reading and approval of the records, regular meeting minutes for April 14th, 2025.
motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. We'll get right into the discussion. The BCRC is here today to do a presentation. And Callie's gonna go first?
Yep.
Perfect. Please state your name and
Sure.
everything for the camera.
Great.
Say cheese.
Hi. I'm Callie Fishburn. I'm a regional planner at the Bennington County Regional Commission. I think I recognize some people from the Stamford Resilience Fair, which I got to attend last month. It was really fun. I enjoyed the food. So we're here for a two-part purpose. So I'm going to start out with our routine municipal consultation that BCRC has to do with all of our municipalities about twice during your 8-year town plan cycle. So this is just something contractually that we do with all of our towns. So this is just routine. So I'll go through that. It's a little bit of me talking at you, but then also hopefully a discussion amongst the Planning Commission members as well. And then after that, my colleague Samantha Page will give a presentation on future land use mapping. So the first part is the consultation. And again, like I said, this is routine. So the state of Vermont has us go out to our municipalities, again, twice during your 8-year plan cycle, just to talk to the municipality about your town plan, about how things are working with your local land use regulations and permitting process, and any other, concerns or issues or topics that you as the municipality want to communicate to us. So part of that process is I take a look at your current town plan and do a review of it, make some notes or recommendations on things that you could do in your next town plan update, and I'll talk through that with you. And then we have this meeting where I talk with you all over a series of questions. And then I just make notes on our conversation and send the final final report to, I've been communicating with Lisa, so I could, circulate it to Lisa and she can make sure you get to it all. And then that's just for your information and for your records. And then when we report to the state, we just say which towns we spoke to and that sort of thing. So that's just sort of the general, how things go with this process. So like I said, the first part is I take a look at your current town plan, which was adopted in 2019. Plans are good for 8 years, so that means your next plan will need to be adopted by June of 2027 to stay current. So you've got about 2 years, almost exactly 2 years from now, until your plan expires. And it can, take some work to update a town plan depending on the extent of updates that you want to do. So there's no rush right now, but it is a good time to start, thinking about things you might want to consider for the next town plan update and kind of getting your wish lists ready, so to speak, and also, reviewing any changes in state requirement, which is something that we can also help with. And before you actually get into the process of updating the town plan, possibly starting next year. So again, I took a look at your 2019 plan, and as it meets all of the statutory requirements that were in place at the time, and there might be a few adjustments that might be needed to the town plan to meet, some of the changes in state statute. And again, I can, have this more specific in the report that I'll make sure to send to Lisa, so that you'll have it all there. So just reviewing my notes here. So I think the main thing is that the next town plan update will need to discuss housing targets in compliance with the 2023 Home Act, which some of you may be familiar with. There's just some additional requirements related to that are placed on us at the regional level, where we have to set regional and municipal housing targets. And then we also, suggest that municipalities have some, additional discussion around how to meet housing targets. And we have more information about the housing targets and the methodology and all of that in our current regional plan. And we're going to be doing an update of our regional plan that we just finished updating. And that's, part of also what Sam will be talking about later. But so that's, one of the recommendations is needing to discuss the housing targets for Stamford that were set in the regional plan. And we set those housing targets based on, availability of infrastructure like water and sewer, and, based on past history of how many housing units you've permitted in the past. So I don't know what the current target is for Stamford, but I think it's it's very low. So again, don't remember the top of my head, but yes, very low, as you said. Again, I think just reviewing my notes here that again, currently your town plan meets pretty much all of the statutory requirements, other than, just having more of a discussion around the housing targets. So, when you embark on your next town plan update, unless there's something major that you all as a planning commission and as a community would like to see added or changed, there's no reason to have a complete overhaul of the town plan, from a requirements standpoint. It meets, all of the required elements that need to be in a regional plan. I think BCRC may have even worked with the town in 2018 and 19. Jim Sullivan, I believe, probably worked with you all on that. So generally when we're working with the town on a town plan, we're making sure that they're meeting all of the requirements. And, then I make some recommendations about, how it can be improved. And, again, not anything that might necessarily be required, but just recommendations for strengthening the town plan. So, it could be, structured to make it read easier, or, have more action-oriented items in the plan. Oftentimes what we work with on municipalities for town plans now is sort of a implementation table that we put at the end, where we list all of the actions that have been identified throughout the plan and who at the town is responsible for implementing those actions and what a timeline might be. That's not binding, when you put that in a table, it doesn't require you to meet that by that specified deadline, but it's just a helpful tool for, select board, planning commission. If you don't want to comb through the long document to see everything, for the actions, you can go and refer to that table at the end. And so I won't, read you right now my entire in-depth review of the town plan, because I do want to make sure we have plenty of time for conversation on some of the questions I want to ask. But this again will be included, in the report that I'll make sure that Lisa has. And of course, I will be able to answer any questions that you would have. So that's just a little bit about the town plan. Does anybody have any questions about the town plan process, or yeah?
Yeah, so just maybe it's a little off topic, but do you know that it hasn't already expired when the village center designation expires? Just in relevance to talking about the town plan.
The Yulm expired. That's awesome. We'll also be talking about that at the other end of the meeting as well.
Yeah, that's new, and I know Sam will get into that a little bit. But yeah, up until recently, village centers did have to be renewed and expired, but right now they don't anymore.
I guess the bigger question around that would be any type of force demands that may come through that.
Right now, as of the most recent
I would feel comfortable saying should not be something that should keep anyone up at night. Certainly, it will open opportunities for you to have sewer water discussions, because some of those funding opportunities are, you might get first in line for certain areas. But remember, there's gonna be a lot more of these in the state now, so there's gonna be a lot more people that have frontage here, so it'll help divide areas into tiers. But that's only, if you're afraid of having a maybe conversation that, water sewer that may or may not ever happen. No, I appreciate you bringing that up.
And I'll also just say that's Nick Zayas from BCRC. I realized we didn't introduce him. He's moral and support tonight. So, yeah.
If I remember right, the last one, Jim was very involved, BCRC was very involved.
Mhm.
If I remember right, that document is long. Has anybody here read the town plan? And they wrote, they helped put most of that together, and
Yeah.
the board just ended up, we had to pay them to do it, I forget what it cost, but you kind of simplified things.
Between $10,000 and $20,000 is what it feels like, I would imagine, and that would have been part of the municipal planning grant, so it would have like, your town share probably would have been 10-20% of that. So a
Yeah, it
couple
was
thousand
like
dollars.
$3,000, $4,000, that's kind of right.
Yeah. So that, brings me to something else that I'll just mention before we get into some of the questions is Nick mentioned the municipal planning grant, and that's typically the source of funds that towns tap into to update their municipal plan or other planning documents like their bylaws. Towns can apply for that and get funding to hire a consultant to help them work on those documents. It doesn't have to be us. It often works out that way, but you don't have to work with us. We usually are still involved somewhat in ensuring at the end that your plan meets all of the statutory requirements and whatnot. And so that's something that you could consider. The municipal planning grant cycle, usually the applications open up in the fall and are usually announced, like awards are announced in the winter time sometime, and then work starts shortly thereafter. So that's something that you could consider for an upcoming municipal planning grant cycle, which again, I think the next one would be sometime this fall. I would imagine like September or October would be, a time that it would be released either this year or, possibly next year too. But, oftentimes it takes longer than you think, I think sometimes. For even, whoever you're working with, whether it's us or somebody else, we want to make sure there's time to have lots of consultation with the planning commission as we're, ready, and also plenty of time for public engagement so that you can hear from the public about what they want to see in the plan. And then the adoption proceedings, take some time as well because there's hearing requirements. So, 2 years from now may sound like, oh yeah, that's plenty of time. And it is if you're starting to think about it now, but it is a lengthy process. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And if you have questions or want to talk now or after tonight about the municipal planning grant or just the plan in general and putting a plan together to work on the plan, I'm, happy to have that conversation. Are there other questions or comments before I get into some of the questions I need to ask?
I have a little question.
Yeah.
The new housing rules, are those mandates or recommendations?
So the housing target, so the housing targets that we set in our regional plan that for each of our municipalities, those are targets, not mandates. The Home Act of 2023 does say that in an area served by both municipal water and sewer, you have to allow at least 5 units per acre. But that is for land that has municipal water and sewer. I don't know how much that would apply to Stamford. Probably not at all. Probably not at all.
5 units per acre?
5 units per acre. Yeah.
And that's,
So
that's what they count.
that kind of leads directly into the question, why I asked the question I asked.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Very reasonable thing.
Yeah.
You have questions on, but yeah, that's a big town problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
When we put in for our town the last round,
Mhm.
we put in for the lowest end of the spectrum. roughly how many houses were being built a year,
Mhm.
and we took the lowest one.
Mhm.
We don't have water or septic, and we just,
Yeah.
we stay at that growth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't have the targets in front of me, but like the bulk of the housing targets for our region are being assigned to Bennington and Manchester, and to a lesser degree, like Pownell, Shaftesbury, Arlington. Because again, the methodology that we used in our most recent 2024 regional plan was based heavily on infrastructure, existing infrastructure, and historically how many housing units you've permitted. Which, you know, for towns like Stamford, again, low on both counts. You don't have much, you know, infrastructure in terms of water and sewer, and have been, you know, permitting only a small amount of new housing units each year. So, you know, a lot, you know, of the discussion that we're having around housing targets and how to advance those. Well, I think it's still important to, you know, have the conversation with all the towns. Like, again, the bulk of the targets we put to Bennington and Manchester and the towns that can, you know, reasonably support with the infrastructure they have in place. So,
We'll have a lot better information about what those targets are gonna be with our updated methodology in the course of the next couple of months.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna be doing most of the work on those. All the tea leaves point to nothing changing for a town. If you're in some of the other towns where they, the infrastructure is already in place, that might be something you start having a conversation about how you're gonna address these. But this is certainly not something that you should need to worry about at all. But I encourage you to bring it up.
5 dwellings per acre seems like an awful lot.
I mean, and it's all relative to, you know, the scale of your community. I mean, it might sound like a lot in Stamford. It's not a lot in Bennington, you know, so it's all relative. And I think, like,
Yeah,
you know, that's,
we don't have water and sewer.
yeah,
So
It's
we're
really
pretty
not a lot
much
of
exempt.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I think it all, that's, you know, part of the reason why our methodology takes that into account. You know, it's not reasonable with Stamford's infrastructure that you're going to see tons of housing development. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any other comments or questions on that before I move to some of my more routine questions? Okay. So, my next segment after talking about the town plan is to just ask you all if there are any training needs of the municipality that we can help with. You know, we host already an annual land use essentials training, which I think, Lisa, you may have been at. So we have training like that happens every year in April.
Is that available? Like, is that recorded?
It was, yeah. It's on our website. I can send you the link if you'd like. Or just any other like general training needs related to land use and planning that you feel like would be helpful that we can help connect with. And if you can't think of anything, that's also fine. There's no pressure.
Get a point on that, because you were at the resiliency fair.
Yes.
So, with that in mind, if anything comes up from your end up there with, you know, dealing with other towns,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, to share with us like training people might be doing in other towns,
Mm-hmm.
that can be shared with our town.
Yeah.
Like Pete over here, it's like we had that group come down and they offered to do like the same stuff you've offered to do, right? And I'm for local.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd rather have a guy like Pete training people in town. We know Pete.
Mm-hmm.
But they were great.
Was it the MRC, the Medical Reserve Corps that you're
Yes.
talking about? Yeah.
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 They're amazing.
But I think more of this stuff's gonna come up.
Yeah.
And it's not just like training on planning
Right.
stuff, but there's gonna be other stuff coming up in the future that
Yeah.
you'll hear about probably before
Yeah.
we're gonna hear about over here in Stanford.
Well, I imagine that someone, probably your emergency management director for the town, is involved with the regional emergency management committee. I know that one of the most recent REMC meetings was actually here in Stamford, I believe. I'm not sure who your emergency management director is, but they would probably be
Doran?
possibly. Yeah, I don't work on that in our office, but my colleague Dara Zink convenes the regional emergency management committee quarterly. and that is the emergency management contacts and directors at each of the towns who come together to talk about, you know, issues and get presentations from different people. So, and those meetings, I believe, are public, so you could go even if you're not involved as a, you know, officially as an emergency management director. So, again, I know maybe the last meeting or the meeting before that was in Stamford. So,
Our last meeting was in Palm.
oh, okay, yeah. So that's like an example of something that's already happening that, you know, you can continue to be involved in. But yeah, if there are other like.
We also host in the transportation program, we hold trainings on your road erosion and the reporting that the highway guys do. I believe that I've seen the Stamford foreman at some of the one or more of those in the past. So yeah, that's a very important training for all the towns. But V-Trans also does a lot of really cool work on making sure we can do their part of the infrastructure work and stay up to date on that. So encouraging that those road crewmen to take some of those trainings that make it look a little bit boring are really worthwhile. So, but definitely the V-Trans one was for that. I'm sure it's on it. Sorry.
Any other thoughts on training before I move us on? Okay. So the next section is just talking a little bit about your local land use regulations or bylaws and how you feel like they're currently working for you, and if you're considering or thinking about any changes that you want to make.
We're in process of making some changes right now.
Okay.
Starting off with the public notice part of it, or the
Right.
hearing. It's at select board level right now.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the changes you're looking at?
It was all the sign bylaws.
Oh, okay.
But also defining driveways versus private roads,
We got some
talking
work.
about some of the spaghetti lots, as we call them, with very little frontage and long skinny lots, and how to deal with that.
What's the expiration on that, do you know?
Bylaws don't expire. No.
Let me ask you, I'm gonna go back to your grant. Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned for bylaws. Is that separate than the town plan?
So, it would be a separate like process, but the grant program through which you could apply, you could also apply for a municipal planning grant for bylaw work.
So you mentioned the word, or you mentioned consulting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that somebody from Vermont, from your office, or?
It depends. I mean,
For MPGs, we can act as your agent.
yeah.
So in that case, then we would be the person that by picking us to apply for the grant,
Yeah.
you're saying that you're going to have us do it. If you wouldn't necessarily have to go out to bid for that or deal with that process. If you wanted to work with us to say update your bylaws and then also say redo your zoning maps and make sure that they're modernized in a good GIS format, things like that. That's something we do as part of that process as one.
So if we wanted to put together a grant or work on this grant and say we want to hire you guys to look at our current bylaws and see how we could better
Absolutely.
the bylaws and better the community and take away a lot of argument.
That's exactly the kind of process. I just did one of those in our LinkedIn before I took this job, and it's an awesome process. Like, we got a really good bylaw out of that process, and I think you guys, I just read your town plan, your bylaw today. I do think that you could absolutely use for a grant to go and bring that bylaw out of what was probably like 1970s era language and then update it updated piecemeal over the course of a couple of decades. Because it looked like the bylaw that I had before you had approved it. It just felt like this was like 2021 all over again. And this is exactly the kind of project that would be great MPG that gives you a lot of flexibility to get out of it what you guys want and to help sort out some problems here. You're finding this usability. This grant is really good at solving usability problems. Yeah, we could talk about this after if you guys want to start scoping out a project.
Yeah.
Put that on the list.
Lori would know better, because we just redid all our bylaws like 3 years ago.
2021
let them,
And Jim,
align with the state.
Lori, was that, did we have to pay
Yeah.
BCRC?
Yeah.
Jim was here every meeting. Okay.
That's the same grant.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it'll focus on different things each round. But yeah, it didn't have all the hallmarks of like a really modern bylaw, which we could, and it may be what you want. It may also be that you want to address some underlying problem. Like what motivated us to do the same process with home-based business stuff would be really tricky. And we had all kinds of definitions. Home-based business is floating around, people trying to game the system, and we needed to clean that up. We knew we had a problem.
What did you say, game the system?
It was people trying to play with definitions and like scope their business one specific way to try and make it so like someone didn't have to get permits here or whatever.
How one person interprets it to the next.
Yeah,
And
it can
so,
help remove a lot of the discretion from the process.
and so I think what I heard some people talking about is the bylaw modernization grant that BCRC worked with the town on. That was sort of a multi-town consortium project where we worked with several towns to do some bylaw updates that were sort of limited in scope. And that was under like sort of a one-time grant program that the state created. And since then, they've gotten back to just having the municipal planning grant that you can apply for a variety of different things, just to make it, I don't know, maybe simpler than having this whole separate program. And so, you know, I think I would encourage you all to think as a planning commission about, you know, how you want to prioritize the work on your bylaws and your town plan. Because I think, you know, typically if you're applying for a municipal planning grant, it's usually for one distinct project, like either the town plan or the bylaws. I don't think you couldn't apply to do both of the same, but I think it could be also a lot of work for, you know, even if you're working with us or a consultant, it just could still be a lot of work for you, a lot of meetings and long meetings, and, you know, to do them both at the same time. So, you know, I think like the takeaway is to just, you know, think about how you might want to prioritize and plan it out. And if you're interested in a municipal planning grant for this year, you can apply, you know, each year if you want. A lot of towns do that, and you could think about, you know, which one you want to prioritize for the grant.
Didn't we go through some of this a
Yes.
while back,
You just said that.
where I think you guys were on? And, we had to pay like $1,000, and then we got this whole sheet of all different things we could apply onto.
Mm-hmm.
There was something that was with Jim.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so that was again the bylaw modernization grant, which had a match requirement as part of it.
But if we didn't use it, then we were supposed to get it back. I think we did, I'm not sure.
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't,
You had to make at least one zoning bylaw change. We didn't do that.
That process was had a lot more strings on it, and it was a lot more structured than this broader program. That one had very specific state goals you had to be working toward. Because like I thought about applying for both of these, and I picked the planning grant because the problems we need to solve didn't fit that set of boxes that you needed for that grant. This is a much better system that is much more flexible to what you need and what you want to get out of the process. Or of that one.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this. So the way we've been addressing bylaws in this town many, many years is that if the state has a bylaw that supersedes it, you follow the state. The only way our bylaws could have more effect is if they're more restrictive than what the state. Is that correct? So in
Yeah,
other words, we have
generally.
these bylaws that are basically saying you can do this, you can do that, but also
Yeah.
the state says, well, no, you can't. And, you know, we get blindsided many, many times here because of interpretation, and I agree with Jim on that. But that's how lawyers make their money, right? They make it so that there's really no one answer, and everybody, you know, the layperson has to try to sit and figure it out because we can't afford counsel to do that. I think we use a lawyer here almost never. And because of that, I think it creates a lot of controversies, where somebody really understands the law, understands what's right, what's wrong, rather than laymen trying to, articulate from their past experiences. We've been pretty good in this town, I think, staying out of trouble for many, many years, trying to do the right thing. But now, with all these things put on us that we have to do from the state, it makes it more complicated. One of the things we're dealing with right now on the Conservation Committee is cannabis. And in Vermont, it's legal to have cannabis. And the issue becomes when you're fighting for housing and water, and so the Conservation Committee is saying, what lands do we have left? Where would be the best locations? Because it's gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. And how can we put it in the right areas where we're not affecting our housing so I mean, how do we-
10% of it is under state law that governs that towns cannot create bylaws against the state laws that allows cannabis growers to grow. As long as they have a license, they can grow wherever the state tells them the town has no control over that whatsoever.
Not saying
Whereas
that.
a dispensary is a different story.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, nobody's trying to create a bylaw for anything, but they are allowed through state statute. Just like we did with the windmills, just like we did with solar. We can pick areas that best suit the town. And it goes to town vote. This isn't an individual decision. I have 40 acres right in the center of town. I'd love to put it there. I mean, I got the richest land in Stamford. Love to put it there. But, is that the right thing to do for the town when maybe some other things, like other crops could grow there? So, I don't disagree with you. Nobody's trying to create bylaws that you can't. What we're trying to do is like we've done with everything in this town. We don't want windmills up there and the scenic highway. It's national scenic highway that starts right through and goes to this town. And there was a better area over on the other side. The Green Mountain side would be much better, and that's what we put. But you people very nicely decided to put the Hoosic Range.
Which
And-
we're going to change in our
Thank you.
next regional plan.
But I mean, we did a lot of work, Lisa and I, crafting letters, to say, hey, we did a lot of work on this curve, setting up the distances, and right. So I mean, we did some productive things. Perfect. So my question is, sorry, I didn't mean to get on a tangent. How is the BCR handling something like cannabis in rural towns, assisting so that we can get educated on where is the best place, where are we going to get the most benefit from it, rather than just everybody like myself with 40 acres start growing it because I got a cannabis license.
Do it.
So,
No, I'm just saying.
So-
It's not them to tell us where to plant stuff. And it's not us to tell you where to plant stuff.
It's agriculture.
It's agricultural. You got the prime 40 acres over there, do something with it.
So what you're saying is we can just set farming up in a residential section? Is that what you're saying?
Agricultural is not.
Right to farm.
Right to farm.
so, and I guess,
This isn't an argument.
Probably
I'm just trying to-
It's gonna go there.
we're,
That's a lot more announced than corn does, I can tell you that.
All right, let's get back on topic.
just to,
Got enough person to-
So just to close, I mean, I'm happy to share some, I know what VLCT did produced a number of resources and trainings for municipalities when the cannabis law came out. There's like a recorded webinar presentation I've got like slides for, and I think there's even a guide from the Cannabis Control Board that talks about, guidance. It may not address your specific question, it might just be more general guidance, but I'm happy to share those resources if they would be helpful. I'm not an expert on
I'm not answering. I'm just
but
saying-
I can I can pull the resources that I have access to and share them.
You see value in what I said in terms of trying to understand and help the community get prepared.
I mean, obviously there's value in that.
And
And
like this is part of why we come and have these conversations too, that even if it's not something that we have specifically already developed a training for, it's really helpful to hear what issues are top of mind for you all right now, so that we can beef up our own knowledge and help you facilitate those conversations or just have more information. So this is great.
So I guess that kind of generates a business question for me in general, maybe centered around cannabis, but, correct me if I'm wrong, but a town like Stamford cannot collect tax revenue from a place like a dispensary because we don't have a charter. We're not a charter town. So there's only a small handful of municipalities in the state that can actually collect tax revenue.
As I understand it, you have to pass a local option tax on that before, and it has to be generally applicable. But I forget exactly what the details are, that's all.
It can't be specific targeting, cannabis.
Yeah, when I was looking at it in Arlington, I remember that we were talking about, okay, do we need to apply like, food and beverage tax? So we opted to not do any of it at all, but yeah, that'd be the kind of thing of, okay, that's something that you can hopefully the LCP, which has all really good resources, and they'll be able to guide the town to get to whatever conclusion the voters want to get to on that. But as you said, it's gonna go, this is exactly what kind of topic that'll be.
What's the percentage revenue that towns are getting from?
I think I got an email on that recently. It's 1% of revenue. So all businesses, rooms, meals, beverages, all of the sales tax, the businesses would have to charge an additional 1%. And then the state filters that, takes their like quarter of 1% and gives it to us.
What's the average revenue for marijuana dispensaries?
3.5 million.
so to wrap back to go back to the discussion and move us along with your permission. So again, just a recap on the bylaws and town plan. I would just say, think about it. Happy to share the resources that are out there for the municipal planning grant and to help you think through at another time after you've had time to think about like how you want to prioritize if you want to go for an MPG for bylaw rewrites for things that you're already considering, or if you want to look at it for a town plan and how you might want to time that. Happy to have that discussion. The next part of the discussion, and again, this could be a whole meeting's worth discussion, so I'll just, raise it now, and it's something that you could think about, is we're supposed to, run through the development review board system and sort of the merits of having a DRB system. And I understand this is something that you may have discussed at some point at a recent meeting. I was looking at some of your meeting minutes. I know it's come up. So it's just something that we're asked to discuss with you all about, the sort of the merits of a DRB system versus having the split planning commission and zoning board of adjustment, which is, I think, the system you have now. So we're not, there's no requirement on which one you should do. You can keep using the current system, but there are some benefits to having a development review board system, like a more streamlined review process. I think Nick has a handout that I can also send along if that's helpful, that goes in more detail about the DRB process and how that looks compared to the current process you have now. So again, this could be a whole meeting's worth discussion, and I certainly don't want to, take all the time to do that discussion now, because I feel like we wouldn't have time to do it justice. But just something that, I'd encourage you to think about. You can review the materials that again, I can share. I feel like I'm going to be sending you a ton of things. I'm sorry. And, if you ever want to invite us back to have a conversation about it specifically, we'd be happy to come back and have a separate conversation about, the DRB process. But there's no requirement to do anything there. So I'll leave it at that unless there's anything that you want to bring up now. And I think we had already started getting into some of this discussion, and then the next topic before we're, close to the end here of my portion is just discussing some of the it's phrased as non-regulatory implementation strategies of the town, but that basically just means, what are some of the priorities of the town or things that you've done outside of like through your bylaws, like any programs that you've done or initiatives that you've done or things that you have that are priorities of the town. And I think, again, we've already talked about this a little bit related to, protecting scenic view sheds and intermunicipal collaboration. But if there's anything else that comes to mind in terms of like priorities for the town or things that you want to accomplish that are sort of outside of what you would do through your zoning or land use regulations. I think, village center was discussed at a previous, many years ago that then led to you having a village center designation. So that's just like a specific example of something the town has done in the past. So,
flood hazard updates coming down the town needs to be aware about?
oh, that's a good question. I know there's new, flood maps
Not
coming.
in this area.
Not in this area, thank you. Yeah, okay. In another part of our region.
Yeah, the only things floating out there are statewide conversations on the corridors regulation, but that is not finalized by any means. There's also changes to the Act 250 process, some of which Sam will get into. I just watched a seminar on the states in ways that they're working on relaxing rules on wood product manufacturers. Act 250 process much more reasonable for those who harvest timber. So
Kind of late now.
So we may have something like.
yeah,
There's like the state's got it from the timber industry.
the state
Now
is,
they're gonna last.
yeah. In any case, the state is thinking about finding ways to make sure that it is that where they've had people sitting in regulatory limbo for longer than they need to, that they don't lose out of that. And finding ways to improve the efficiency of these processes. But that's about the only thing that we should be thinking about floating on.
I'll say like river corridor language.
Yeah, river corridor language, the state is working on statewide rules that are more broadly applicable to this, but that's still in process.
Did they come up with an actual footage?
I don't think so.
River corridor, it's like, when you ask that question, it's like, where you at?
Yeah, how wide is the river
How
corridor
wide's
in
the
any
river?
given place, and it still varies, and I believe that's part of the conversation, because I had a lot of issues with that thing of very small streams. And I expect that the state, in making the river corridors much more broadly applicable, or they're gonna have to figure out how to find like reasonable solutions that accommodate towns that have a lot more river corridors than even you have in the Montpeliers of the world. Your entire downtown is a corridor, and what you do. So when they solve that problem, they'll get you to solutions that really are more workable down here. But
Good answer.
All right. Any other? All right. Moving into the home stretch. So I'll end by just giving just a quick overview of programs, just so that you're aware of some of the stuff that BCRC does. So in our office, we have a variety of staff and programs. We have emergency management, which we already talked about. My colleague Dara Zink convenes the REMC meetings and helps towns with hazard mitigation plans and access to training and exercises and that sort of information. We have transportation planning in our office that can look like a variety of things from like traffic counts to specific traffic or transportation studies, or looking at, sidewalk or bike lane feasibility and studies and that sort of thing. We have an energy program where we help towns write enhanced energy plans and other, energy projects as they may arise. Again, our regular municipal and land use planning, which is much of what we've already been talking about tonight. Environmental planning. So Jim Henderson in our office has been there forever. I'm sure some of you have worked with him or know him. And he does a lot of like the water quality, road erosion inventory. He's in touch with mostly the, highway foremen, highway guys. We have economic development in our office as well, so we can help, towns or communities that are interested in exploring economic development activities that might be suited for their town. And we also have the Solid Waste Alliance that is run out of our office, Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance, which I believe Stamford is a member of.
About a commercial solar array, community solar programs. Anything?
So, I mean, we don't operate programs like that out of our office.
No, I know.
Yeah. And I know it's become a little bit more complicated with the end of group net metering, that the state sunsetted that program. So you can still have community solar arrays, but you can't have people getting the group net metering credits on their bills anymore. You can still have a community. That's a very technical conversation that, but we haven't really played a super active role in that before. And I know a little bit about it, but it's not usually, like, again, it's not something that we're like hands-on
Right.
on.
I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you had any knowledge.
Yeah, just,
We're kind of looking into something.
yeah, I'd heard about that, yeah.
Heard about us?
I was reading some of your meeting minutes in preparation for this, so I had seen that it had come up, so.
Sneaky. I like that.
I wouldn't call it sneaky, it's on the website.
You're prepared.
And then I'll just end with reminding folks about your representation. You have commissioners, appointed commissioners to BCRC. Lisa is one of them, and I think Deb is, okay. Dan used to be the commissioner, I believe, at one point. So, commissioners are invited to our bi-monthly commission meetings, although those are public. Anybody can go to those meetings. But the commissioners are the voting representatives on our commission. And again, we have bi-monthly meetings that are open to the public. Anyone's welcome to come. And you're always welcome
We
to
generally serve food.
Yeah.
We also have a couple of secondary committees that we want to flag. And
Oh,
currently,
right.
because Stamford does not have a rep on the regional transportation committee.
Oh,
So if
okay.
anyone from the town wants to join on that, contact Callie, put in touch with me. I'm happy to go and fill that seat. And that's not something that can just be a person from the town. They don't necessarily need appointed or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just a volunteer from their community to serve on the regional transportation committee would always be a good thing. Make sure that someone from the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
It only needs a couple times.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
quarterly.
Don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, because we are taped and a lot of people watch this.
Yeah.
Stamford is a charter town, 1753, just so people.
Great.
I don't want them to think
Yeah.
it's not charter.
March 6th.
March 6th.
Yeah.
So that's what I have. I was just writing down the list of things I said I would follow up with, and I'll make sure Lisa gets that and gets that distributed to everybody. Lisa knows how to reach me, so you can reach me directly. You can go on our website and find lots of information there. And I will at this time pass the mic.
Thank you, Callie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought it was the whiskey.
Okay.
You want to shut the lights?
Oh yeah, that would.
Can you hit the lights right there for me, please?
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, I know it's on the smaller side, but. Okay. So, hi, I'm Sam. Nick and I have been doing this kind of road show, visiting all of the municipalities in the region to talk about this future land use mapping process. So, this is coming out of Act 181, which was passed by the legislature last year, so about a year ago. And there are different things that were in that bill. So You might have heard of it as the Act 250 reform bill, and it does include some changes to how Act 250 will work. It also includes changes to the designation program, so like the questions about the village center, we'll be getting to some of those. And then it includes changes to how the regional planning commissions work. So a lot of what's included in this bill affects us as your regional planning commission, and we're here to share that with you. It doesn't necessarily change things directly on how you operate, but changes some of how we're doing mapping for the region, and how we are connecting with our communities in the lead up to another regional plan update that Callie mentioned. So just to kind of go from like the different levels of plans and maps that we work with, when we do a regional plan, we include a future land use map, which is like a conceptual picture of the region and different types of land uses all over. And so trying to get a picture of where there might be growth, where there are scenic resources that we want to protect, and treating those kind of at a regional scale so we can understand how all of the towns and villages in Bennington, the Bennington area, connect with one another. With Act 181, all of the regional planning commissions throughout the state are now using the same categories for those land use maps. So we are updating our maps to use 10 categories that every other RPC in Vermont is also going to use. So that's why we're going through this process. And we're here to share a draft of what we have and to get your feedback so that it's accurate and that it reflects the town that you all live in and know best. But I do want to be really clear that that map in our regional plan is separate from the map in your town plan, your land use map, and it's separate from your zoning map. So we want them to be pointing in the same direction and to be kind of generally saying the same thing, but you don't have to update your maps, you don't have to change your zoning map. This doesn't override any of the work that you've done at the local level. It's just a different way of talking about land use in the region. Does that make sense? Okay. And then these are the categories. So as I said, there's 10 different categories, and these are for all over the state, but it's not expected that each municipality would have all of them in their town. So in general, I'll call out that there are sort of centers, like the village centers that the village center that you already have. There are also growth areas. So some towns are going to have large planned growth areas like Bennington and Manchester. Some of the towns are going to have smaller growth areas that are called village areas. And again, a lot of that is determined by the presence of utilities. So if a town has public water, public wastewater, or serviceable septic soil or suitable soils for septic, then they would be considered well positioned to have more growth. But if those sort of criteria aren't present, then a town's probably not going to have a growth area included. There's also some like areas that are kind of more use specific. So there's like a resource-based recreation area. If there's a large ski hill, that's a really big economic driver. There's enterprise areas, which are like industrial use areas. And then there are a couple of different categories of rural uses. So there's rural general, which is like a low residential density area. It might also include some working landscapes and scenic resources, but predominantly this is like rural residential. Then there's rural agriculture and forestry, which represents areas that are used for timber harvesting, actively managed forests. They might have agricultural uses, either current or they've historically been used agriculturally. A lot of the land in that category is land that the owner has enrolled in the current use program, and that's how we've been identifying areas that really are well suited for that category. And then rural conservation are areas with significant natural resources. So land that's in Green Mountain National Forest, land that's in a conservation easement of another kind, land that might have like significant habitats or significant wetlands on it. And that's a way of indicating areas that you might be more likely to think you really don't want to see any development. Like your scenic resources, you wouldn't want to see any development. So that's how it would be indicated.
Which is this? You had first Act 250 on there, and now you've got Act 181.
Yeah, that Act 181 is a bill that was passed last year that included changes to the Act 250 process. And so I can describe some of those too. So I don't think this will change anything in Stamford, but some of our towns will opt in to create exemptions to Act 250 in their denser centers. So again, there's requirements for these exemptions that are tied to infrastructure, like public utilities being available, and I don't think that Stamford has meets all of the requirements to opt into this. But just to kind of let you know how this does affect Act 250, there will be municipalities in our region and all over the state that will decide, like Bennington's downtown area, they will likely opt in to Tier 1A or Tier 1B to say that housing projects in the downtown will be exempt from Act 250 because the town will be managing those requirements in their own planning office. And then there are also changes to the designation program. So as Nick kind of teased early on, the designation program is mostly going to be determined through these regional land use maps now. So if you want to add a center where there isn't one, as long as it generally makes sense and aligns with the kind of language in the law, then we can draw that for you on our regional map. And once our plan is approved, you would have a center there. And so if you wanted to expand your village center, now we can draw those boundaries for you as well. And then that change will just be automatic once our plan is approved at the state level. Mm-hmm.
So we had actually wanted a larger village center at the time, and we submitted it to the state, and the state said no, and narrowed it right now.
Okay, yeah, so it would be great. So I'm gonna share a draft, but if I would love to see what you originally proposed and can make those changes. And this is like a perfect opportunity to revisit that.
I think we had extended 1/2 mile to a mile south and half mile to a mile north.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of.
Either to the state line or to at least.
Be very careful.
But, no, I'm just saying, that's what we tried. I don't disagree with you, but I didn't have any say in that. I think you were there. I was probably in the hospital at the time, but I know they tried to put it through.
Okay.
No one's taking advantage of any of that yet, just throwing that out there as well. And
Okay.
There's things happening in town where they could take advantage of many grants that are available through that.
Perfect segue to my next slide. So, because you already have a village center, you would start at this step 2. So step 1 is for towns that don't have any designations right now. Step 2 is for towns that have a current designation program, and step 3 is more similar to the current downtown program. So yes, as you're saying, you could qualify for priority funding in some grant applications, participate in other programs that are just reserved for areas that have village centers. And so there's all these other kind of opportunities to enhance your town center and try to make it the best place that you want it to be. And this is a really kind of broad level overview, but I'll be following up with the slides and with some more background information on what the law says. So
So another point of enlightenment or maybe clarification for myself, so most of the grants are available for non-profit type organizations in the Village Center District?
you mean like you have to be a nonprofit to apply,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, to receive the money, for the most part,
Oh.
not all the grants, but a lot of them.
A lot of these are for governments directly, so it's a lot of things like half of these are about ours. But the one thing that might matter for will be that reconciliation grant is in there. Yeah, it's mostly things that are focused on government priority for planning projects, the Better Connections program, which is about infill infrastructures and things like that. Like
So someone wants to have a business out of their house in the Village Center District, would they be for a profit to receive some of these grants, or is it not?
I feel like most of those grants are not being tied to this stuff. A lot of those are like the economic development stuff that this center designation wouldn't necessarily be able to benefit from. But you can still apply. And that's for our economic development staff.
I guess I'm asking the question for the whole board as a clarification, so when they're talking about this stuff.
yeah.
Because if the grants are for nonprofit businesses, then you're gonna encourage nonprofit businesses, there's no tax revenue from nonprofit.
Yeah. I'll follow up with more information just specifically on the benefits so that you feel like you can share that.
What's the authority to create special taxing districts?
I believe that's TIF districts. That's probably stuff that's probably the tax increment financing districts that they're referencing, but that stuff is its own little monster in the state
I was gonna
legislature.
say,
Yeah, and that was live, it's still being performed until this weekend, so I also know what's going on.
So we, got a $500,000 grant 12 years ago for our sidewalk program.
Mm-hmm.
And Kurt remembers it. I'm looking at this and it looks like this is kind of, some of those bullets are for the same type thing, maybe bicycle paths and stuff. The only thing that happened in this town, they ended up fighting with each other so much, it got cut to $250,000, and it took 10 years to complete the little bit of sidewalk that we got. So grants are great. You saw what happened, a lot of work went into getting it.
You gotta be very, very careful. The select board always needs to be very, very careful when it's getting into any grant program, it's very easy for them to get sideways.
Do you help towns? Because the
Oh, yeah,
last BCR came in and worked with us.
Yeah, we can definitely help, and if there's interest in specific projects in the village center or anywhere in town, I mean, that's kind of what Callie was talking about right at the end, like, if you have a project you're interested in, let us know and we can try to figure out what grant opportunities exist, like, if you wanted to revisit the sidewalks, not saying you do, but just as an example, like, we could help you think about that, apply to some grants, and then like Nick and our colleague Mark, who I think worked on that sidewalk project 10 years ago, could help like
Yes.
manage that
Oh, I
project.
don't think he'd ever come back.
He said he hasn't been to Stamford.
But the thing is, the most important thing is we ended up, for the kids locally at least, at one section, had a safe place to walk to school and a safe place to cross.
Yeah.
We had no cross, we had nothing. So some people come through 70, 80 miles an hour, you know what I'm saying? And it's,
Yeah,
we did a traffic study, it's bad.
yeah. We're seeing that in a lot of our towns.
And we do have the ability to do traffic studies, that's just an entirely different service. Those are free and easy, so if you do have those kind of issues, talk to us and we'll see if we can get you some data to back up the.
any law enforcement grants?
That's not something that is something that's coming through at all, it sounds like.
Wow.
The law enforcement, there's the law enforcement agencies, the struggling staff themselves even to do the normal law enforcement, let alone speeding in the town.
We can hire a company.
But we're part of a county that doesn't service us, so we get nothing. And we voted it down as a town because it was financially not. But anyway, that's another discussion, let's move on.
Okay, so I'm gonna share
Get a constable.
the draft we have. So just to kind of reiterate, this is a first draft. So like hearing about village center boundaries that were different when you first applied. Like that would be really helpful to see some of that information. I have paper copies. I have 10, so okay. And then this,
How many do you have, did you say?
I have 10. There's 2 different kinds. So these are the village center. So yeah, again, just to kind of like talk through. Yeah, I think they both got. So the green is rural conservation, and again, that's not. It doesn't mean it's like necessarily conserved, although a lot of this land is in the national forest or it's conserved through an easement. The blue color is ag and forestry, so a lot of that land is in the current use program right now. The yellow is kind of the rural residential color. That aligns pretty closely with your zoning district right now. And then there's a village center that is expanded a little bit from what the current boundaries are, and on the map that's really zoomed in. Here, let me see if I can pull that one up.
It literally goes to the bridge that way. I'm pretty sure the village designation goes right to the bridge.
Start with the bridge.
I think I extended it a little bit to go. I think this version.
Cut off.
Yeah.
I don't really know why it was the state cut that off.
At the river.
Yeah, we have a lot more discretion this round, so it's good. It's at least giving you a lot more flexibility. Make this exactly what you want it to be.
Historically, the village here is from the lane to the first bridge.
Yeah.
That's,
So you're a little bit further on
We
the
included
south end.
Belmonts. We ended up including Belmonts. There was conversation, I don't know if the annual vote or whatever, but we ended up including Belmonts ourselves.
Okay. And is there still interest in going in extending it further? You think, or you can talk about it too. Like I don't even.
I think maybe the scarier part for this town, not so much the village center district, but it would be that buffer area.
Okay.
beyond
Yeah.
The village center district, which I don't know if that becomes, if you sign on to that, if there's.
No, that's just.
Housing demands, that would be.
No, it's just interim. So I just included it as like another piece of information, but
it matters for one important thing. That one important thing is that it matters for certain things like wastewater study programs. So say suddenly everyone's septic's in the center of town start to fail, and you are faced with the problem that Westford has faced. So this is very much a near and dear thing to our region, that you have a downtown with a failing downtown septic system, and you may want to go and study septic. That quarter-mile buffer is your study area around this designated center. So it makes it so if you're faced with that, there is an apocalyptic scenario, you have more flexibility with a larger center to consider a wider area for, say, land-based disposal fields or things like that. That if you don't have that, it can be a really big problem because you don't have funding for engineering to solve and reach some of those areas. So that's what that matters for. That's about the only thing it matters for.
I guess maybe another point of clarification is that Stanford wouldn't necessarily need both, right?
Yeah.
They could have one or the other.
Yeah, it could be very much and I'm not sure exactly how this applies to water grants, but I do believe they do some. Where, yeah.
I mean, I'm asking a lot of these questions in the topics that we're discussing tonight, just to give this board something to think about.
The boundaries of these centers really matter. So making sure we get them right for you is one of the most important things that's going to come out of this process. Because it's absolutely one of the things that really benefits you the most and gives you the most opportunity. But it's only positive opportunities of things that you can go into.
So I just want to clarify something, which I'm sorry for a sidebar over here, but, so the lines are the existing village center designation.
Mhm.
The rest of the purple is what you're doing now,
This is our draft.
of what you're gonna be proposing.
And that's why we're here, to get your input on.
I'm just
How-
wondering why, like, some of this stuff, like, I guess I understand Mill Road, you know, to an extent, you know, extending it a little bit, but it seems a little awkward. But also, why some of this stuff, why, like, so the old Poppin property, which is the Stone Line Farm or whatever it is now, like, initially, why wasn't that on the bill? Like, I guess that's a different topic, but I just wanted to clarify, I won't get into all that, but I just wanted to clarify that, that's the proposal, I just wanna make sure.
Yeah,
that we're on the same page.
that's the proposal, and if we included anything that you think shouldn't be included, please tell us. If we missed stuff that you feel like
Yeah, we'll
should
definitely
be.
discuss it in meeting.
Originally,
Yeah,
part of the
perfect.
conversation was, you go to the Mill Road as far as where the town garage.
Yeah, I get it.
So originally that was part of the conversation because you could potentially open yourself up for a lot of grants for the town garage.
Yeah, but isn't town garage in here?
Not sure, I can't really tell.
Because I think this is, I forget the name of that road, that's right after the mailboxes.
Henry Hill?
Henry
Is
Hill.
Is that what it is? So I think that's Henry Hill right there, and then this continues up, and I'm pretty sure that,
So I guess would be, what would the BCRC purpose be to try to expand those?
To help you realize like a truer representation of the center of your town.
it'll definitely be something worth discussing in meeting for sure.
Yeah, and so that's kind of a
This
good.
is what it feels like, it's the cultural center of your town.
Yeah.
It's the
But at the end of the day, I understand,
but-
at the end of the day, I understand that we decide where the village is.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and so to kind of for next steps, like please look at them. I'm gonna send a digital copy so you can zoom in on your
Perfect.
screens. If you have questions, please send them to us. We are like kind of wrapping up our visits to all of the towns, but we don't have to make any final decisions anytime soon. So just, let us know when you have notes or questions. And, like,
we're
in
trying
some-
to be finalized in the fall, ideally.
Yeah.
So, like, sometime over the summer, into the fall,
That'd be-
think about this, making sure that these maps are right.
Yeah, and
The
I'll.
beginning of the fall or the end of the
That's our call.
I don't know. We'll check in the beginning of the fall, and then we'll see how far you got. But yeah, I guess I'll just say that like I'll include this when I send the material. There are certain broad definitions of like what these categories are. So it's not just like a total free for all, but they are pretty broad, and so your knowledge of your town is like the best resource for making decisions about these boundaries. And we looked at your zoning. We were taking into account these descriptions. But if there are things that we missed or got wrong, please tell us.
Perfect, thank you.
Is this something that you at your office, you people, have come up with this?
Yeah, so Nick and I have been working on, we made the map in line with what this Act 181 requirements are. So the statute has descriptions of like what a village center is, but
I thought we had done what we could with the village. There was no more that we could handle because a lot of people didn't want it any further in their backyards
okay.
in areas.
Why wouldn't they have included the golf course restaurant, which is probably the biggest business we have in town today?
We can. I didn't.
I'm
That
just, I just find it odd.
Yeah, so in the future, I think it'd be easier, get that out there and a lot of us know exactly where it is and what.
Yeah.
But it should come up with where you are on there with the names.
Yeah. Okay. I can add that information
That
before I
needs
send
to
it
be
to you.
more itemized.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of newer ones that don't know all the people. And there's some of the older ones that don't know the new ones that went in there.
You're not forced, Jill, you're not forced to do anything to drain the
Yeah, this is is just a recommendation, this isn't a mandate.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
don't
it
even have
might
to do
help
anything.
all of us.
No, I'm just saying in terms of the actual map, like, yes, I agree with you that the names of the streets and all that good jazz in there. But I think what Kurt's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, is that pretty much means nothing to us. You know, in the big scheme of things, like, we don't have to, we can leave it just the way it is and move on.
Well, wouldn't this affect, grants if we expanded this?
Well, I think, yeah, like what Nick was saying, it would be good to have the village center. Yeah, the village center has
Thank you.
implications, but in terms of like your zoning, it doesn't change anything.
I know.
So it's just and the rest of it really doesn't have any sort of like regulatory impact. Okay, well, I will let you get on with your evening.
Are you done with this period?
Yes, yeah.
Good
we'll-
job, turn that on, please. And I'm just gonna.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yep.
I'm supporting two of them. I'm the infrastructure guy, you're support.
No, no.
You don't want to hear a whole other.
Oh.
We can prepare something.
Is it a microphone?
I don't know, is this part
Is
of
this
your?
a microphone?
Yeah, it's now like.
That's just the microphone.
Fancy.
Oh,
Yeah, it's for video recording. This is the town recording, and the other one's for.
Somehow.
Because I've not seen it, how could you don't ask me?
yeah.
Not on the,
I have a table to myself.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. They're done.
Okay. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, take care.
All right. Right on to old
What are you doing?
business.
You're throwing stuff at me.
I know we had, Jim wanted to talk about, solar again. Do you have any updates or anything?
Yeah, well, I've been talking to Ralph, and, to be quite honest with you, Ralph, this may be over his head, but he's trying to get contacts, he's trying to make all his communications here and there. So I reached out to a developer I know, down in Massachusetts. And he put me in touch with a guy that's right here close, in Vermont, who is a solar construction, he's the guy that builds it. And he has all the right contacts. So he and I we started our pretty much in-depth conversations a couple days ago. And so he did a bunch of math for us. And I can tell you right now, and this is gonna be shocking as hell, but I want you to kind of just understand the fact that this is ground floor. We have no idea what directions this is going right now. But we're talking about a $7 million project, $7.5, $8 million project. For what I was referring to before. Now, that sounds like a lot of money.
It's
It
for
is.
5 megawatts.
That's a 4 meg system. 4 meg.
Okay.
We did some, only question I have is for Laurie. How many homes that are on the grid basically are in Stamford? Approximately. Yeah. So I'm right on, I told the guy 350.
Yeah.
So I'm right in that ballpark. But anyways, so we did some math based on the construction end of it, the whole 9 yards, it's around 7.5, somewhere in that city. It's like $2 a watt, right? So talking about 4 meg, figure on that. But, under the federal guidelines right now, he says, now that sounds like a, you know, unreachable target and stuff, but there's grant writers out there, right? He knows them, he's talked to them, he knows who they are, he could direct us to this. These grant writers, of course, we have to pay the grant writer. These grant writers, if they make grant, if they put a grant in for us, you can get up to 50% off. On top of the already federal grant of 30%.
Which
Once
is
you
getting
buy the
wiped
system within 1 year,
I think that federal grant's getting wiped.
it's not.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Because it's
Well,
part of that.
He just got finished with one, and he's on his way to Maine for another big project. And their company had just received their first payment on it. So I looked it up too, because I thought it dropped down to, I was told it dropped down to 25. It dropped 5%, and it did. And then Vermont increased it back to 30%.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Trump's.
Yeah,
orders.
I heard that.
I don't know if it's considered, I know for sure it's residential. I have no idea about
So
the
this is
large
commercial.
scale commercial
So this
thing.
is commercial.
So that's why
based
solar
on,
companies are pulling out.
based on the current system, if we can get one of these professional grant writers, we're already could take 30% off of that 7 mil.
Yep.
Let's go with that right there already. Then, if we can get somebody to write this grant, there's another 50% off. So there's ways of, you know, knocking this price way down. But what it'll do is say we knock it down to, you know, whatever, 3 million. We can, $3 million project. And we divide that price up, and if you got a calculator, you can kind of do the math on yourself. But just divide that price
350.
by 350, right? And you come up with something like $1,500, $1,800 a year.
Per person?
I mean, yeah,
Per person?
something like that.
Per household.
And so,
Yeah, you got a lot of
Per-
seniors that
per
can't.
house.
It's actually 212 houses in Stamford, 387 units, so most apartments and stuff. 212 houses. I didn't realize it was so small.
Either way.
So
When you
either
talk
way,
about numbers-
this is just kind of like, you know, it's a possibility. But more importantly, the way we have to go about it, because I know the municipality are not entitled to certain grants. So what other towns are doing and what other companies are doing is they're creating an LLC for the town. And the people own this LLC, and everything comes through there, and so that's what enables us to write these grants to get this 50% off. So there's gonna be some creativity here. It's way beyond my thinking, but I'm willing to keep going with it, but
I think
If
it's gonna
any-
be, I think we need way more information. Again, opinion from
well,
just
yeah,
me.
this is the first.
Because I can tell you right now, somebody like me, now that has solar on my home, I'm gonna vote no. So when this goes to town vote, I'm gonna vote no, because I'm not paying for, you guys have free electricity, I already paid for mine.
Well,
You-
the
no,
whole time you wouldn't have to, and I knew that.
You know, I'm not shutting your thing down, I'm not saying it's not a good idea, like,
Right.
run with it, grab all the information you get, I think knowledge is power. So if you can get the commission a lot more information, I think we can run with a lot more with somebody. If so, A, get in touch with somebody about a grant, B, find out, you know, the town will need to have location, price, the amount that it's gonna cost per taxpayer, you know, the longevity of the project, how long it's gonna take to, you know, by the time we collect all the money and the revenue, then to put the system in, to build the actual system, like, I think the people are just gonna wanna know a lot before we bring this there, so I think we're at the beginning
So
stages.
basically, I just came tonight, I wasn't gonna say anything.
Oh, it's good to
I
know.
don't have to prolong this any longer, so, I'll just continue to get the information and bring it to you. I knew there's people here that has solar, that just put it in, and don't give a crap about it, but.
I don't not give a crap about it.
No,
It's for what's best for the town, like I'm on board,
Lack of a
whatever.
better word,
But in terms of just like, if it came down to a vote and it was like a certain amount of money per
it's not gonna be,
taxable home,
it's
it would
gonna
be
be
like,
per person who uses it. It's got nothing to do with you,
But does everybody use this? Does
if
it-
they want to,
but
right?
my
So that's
point
the
is,
thing.
But
So
if I
no.
don't, do I still have to pay that money?
Listen,
beginning stages. I
first
think, it's just-
stages. If you don't want nothing to do with it, don't want nothing to do, you don't have to have nothing to do. It's got nothing
How
to
much
do.
land you?
But I will, well, you gotta think about, so 4 megs probably in a range of 10 to 15 acres.
Your land, you got a good spot.
Yeah, it's a doable spot, right?
Scenic byway.
And the thing when you're talking about commercial part of
Got
it,
that right.
because it doesn't have to necessarily be in the same exact spot either. But what I'm saying is that I'll just get some information more, and it'd be nice if we could find somebody that would finance it, knowing that it could be, pretty much paid off in no time at all.
So I didn't even go with the computer, the updates for that, where they went through and put you on that mega, whatever. Yeah, with the
Fiber
different-
optics?
Yeah, I said, no,
Yeah.
I didn't need
But I
it to
mean,
go
what are you
on.
paying for electricity right now? I'm just throwing it out there. What are you paying for electricity a month?
And I'm perfectly fine where I am.
$350
I'm happy with what I have.
400, yeah,
So I mean, if you could half that and half,
I'm all for it.
I did.
I was gonna ask, yeah, I was gonna ask them how solar panels work out for them.
Well, I'm just at the final stage of getting hooked up, so I don't have definitive numbers, but if I go by what my stuff is, and the reason why I know, not to get off topic about that, is that the federal grant is the 30% tax credit is being wiped out, is because actually the company that I used to install solar, I was one of the last Vermont installs, because they're like, that
Yeah.
solar freaking companies are freaking out right now because that's their sell.
Right.
You could sell a system for, $70,000 and you get, $30,000 credit off that, it wipes the payment down. Now they're gonna have a tough time building a system. They're gonna have to cheap out with their system. They're not gonna be able to charge the money they had because people just aren't gonna have, substitute a payment for the system to offset their electric bill that's more. So if I have a 1 year standard electric bill of $250, and now I put solar in my house, and now my bill's $450, and I got solar, like, well, who's gonna do that? You know what I mean? Like nobody. So that's the only reason why I know about the residential portion of the tax credit. But it's either way, I'm interested in information. I'm always interested in information.
I mean, this town, is not adverse to starting something. We were the first town in Vermont to have high-speed internet, that we started with $10,000. And today, to do what we did 20 years ago, would be millions.
yeah.
And the bottom line is, we could have kept going with the co-op, but people weren't getting paid. I said they needed to get paid from day one, and we couldn't expand the way we wanted to, because you couldn't get the help. In your situation, I take it that somebody will handle all.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I spoke to the person that actually created an LLC for a township, so that they are able to get the grants. And they just did that, so, that's a New Hampshire town. I'm gonna get the information so that I can speak directly to their planning commission, so they went through, they handled it in the planning commission. They handled everything, well, they don't call it a planning commission over there, but it's the same thing we do, and it's the ZBA is part of it. It's sort of like a DVR, but it does everything. But anyways,
Yeah.
The information that they got was, they got both grants. They hired a grant writer who required a percentage, but it's a fraction percentage of
Nothing is
what
free
they said.
99.
Right, so, if you could get a $4 million grant from the federal government kickback, or $3 million,
All right, so bottom line is get us some more information and, keep digging it. I'm not opposed to it, and I don't think anybody here is opposed to that information, so. All right, is there any more old business?
Yeah, I have one thing I need to address. You were there at the last select board's meeting, and I brought in information from the state about out here and what is actually the state had taken to eminent domain. When you walk out there, you'll see 2 stakes in the ground. That's where the sign would have to go based on the, encourage you to take time to look at that map that I gave you with the,
I never magnified glass, I can't see.
oh, come on, really? Is this the path you're going? Well, here, let me give you,
It's
I'll
not bad.
pass one out for you so you can
What
see
does the
it.
map say?
But
Translate it for me.
I'm not talking about the map, I'm talking about the boundaries from the state. They set the map.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Oh, thank you. Did you see where the, comes
Yeah,
down the
it's
next
all the way
25 feet, man? So, I knew of this when we did the sidewalks, I just forgot, because that was 10 years and so involved. But I remember a big fuss about the right of way in front of the school and the side, and it was all kinds of issues about it. But it ends up right there, just so you know, where the fence is, it goes back 50 feet, not 25 feet, all the way over to the other driveway, and it stops, comes back 50 feet, and then jumps. So technically, you could get a sign on the other driveway. I don't know if it would be feasible, but I'm just looking, and the other thing that I was trying to get somebody to listen to me, I've been working, you know, with these people for almost a year and a half now. There is a way that we can take the property back. We just have to apply.
And I just tell the state we're putting it there and see what they do.
They already came back and said,
It's up for a year.
I put the sign
Hang
where
the
we
sign on
want,
the flagpole.
let the state come down and rip it
why
out.
are we approaching it like this?
But because we had a sign out there for a year and they never said anything.
I know.
The only one who started it, there's a few people in town that started on this thing.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, it was. And you just, for some reason, don't want a town sign out
You're
there.
wrong, I do want the time sign, and I'm not the one who started it. That's-
We already gave a recommendation to the select board. It's in their hands now.
Put the sign up, let them take it down.
I disagree with you. Anyways, now that we know where the right of ways are,
Or don't put any sign up at all, that's
Let
what
me-
I'm for, now. My vote is for no
can I
sign.
finish here? Keep it right. Okay, we can get a sign up from the state. All we have to do is order it. It's through the MUTCD. It's a large sign that they'll put right in the right of way that says town, school, town office, library, and whatever else we need to put on. They'll put it right on the road, right in the center. We can do that now. Because it's a sign that's accepted by the scenic highway, it's all the rules and regulations.
Jacob, all that literature you've had for the last year and a half has nothing to do with signs, it's all about billboards. Not putting up a billboard, we're putting up a sign.
I respectfully disagree with that.
It has nothing to do with signs.
It had everything to do with.
Scenic highway is billboards, it's not signs.
Go ahead and finish, and then I'll
The
speak.
point is, we keep running around on this, and I am sick and tired of it. We gave our recommendation to the select board, it's in their hands.
Can I make a motion? I'd make a motion.
Whatever you have, I'm obviously never going to see it,
Did
so.
I give you
No,
a
I've never
copy of
seen
it?
anything from you, so I'm just hearing things that you say every meeting after meeting, and
I passed everything right out at the select board.
you didn't pass
No.
anything out at the
No,
select
I
board.
didn't have enough to be honest.
Since we started, the three of us as a subcommittee on the sign, I've never seen a thing you have, so I'm just hearing words, and I don't know what to do, I have nothing to read, or I'm just
In all
going on
due-
your word.
In all due respect, to you, I brought information, watched the tapes, where you said, I don't wanna go through this right now. David, I'll be glad to stay after the
Yes,
meeting.
and you
for
didn't.
now." But the board asked me before Peter became chair, and before, do this. Since then, Jim has come on in the last, I don't know, year, whatever, I don't know how long he's been here. But nobody ever relieved me of my duty. that all this work that I've been doing, Jim talks about the countless hours he's put in.
I'm sure, but I've never seen any of it.
I appreciate and respect that you guys have done this. My only goal in all of this was to just make sure whatever we do, that it's done right, so it's not taken down.
Right.
The board never asked you to do this.
That's not.
I've been on this board and I was chair of this.
Watch the videos, Dan. Thank God we're taping everything.
I'm just saying that.
All right, I think we're at the 5-minute mark for a discussion. I appreciate your information. I'm willing to read any information that you have. If you want to get it to us, I have no reason to not read anything.
Right here.
I'll read it, make a copy for me so I can read
No,
it
you
and not
gotta
stay
get
after.
enough for everybody.
Perfect. And then, bottom line is, I have to agree with Dan. To be honest with you, it's in the select board's hands right now. Okay,
And
whatever.
that's why I brought it to him.
Yep, and if they choose not to, we're not,
Right.
this isn't the select board meeting though.
I understand
you know,
that.
so I-
But this is a planning commission meeting.
Agreed, and
And
we
the state has come down with relevant
because
information.
people keep calling and making it us well known, like, hey, issue, and when that stuff happens, the state keeps digging their nose in. We don't want the state involved in anything. Leave them out of it. I think we're good, but people lately have just been going outside of their general duties and making phone calls and doing things that they shouldn't be doing without consulting the full board. We are here now. We've discussed this topic. I appreciate your information. I will 1000% read it in its entirety. Okay?
You just made a lot of comments. I want to
And
address
I will read them for the next time that we have a meeting. But it is in the select board's hands right now.
Fine.
We've already passed it
Why
to
would
this
we
board.
actually get around it?
Okay?
We're not hashing anything, and I want to address what you just said.
Okay.
Can you tell me specifically who's going to the state and not following procedure for boards? What are you talking about?
Well, what I'm exactly talking about is people on boards, yourself. Let's just use the topic since you brought it up.
Let's do it.
And I'm only going to touch this brief.
Okay.
Okay? You
Well, you have to let me have a say.
you approached somebody on private property and considered yourself a member of the zoning board. There has not been one meeting that the zoning board had that gave you permission to represent the ZBA on that property and go after a woman on her property trying to figure it out. And then if we want to get on to another topic, we had somebody else on the zoning board who showed up, and it will be you, with another member of the town that acted in the member of the board. I am not okay with that. I'm never going to be okay with that. If I have an issue with the select board, I call Nancy. Okay, and I go to Nancy. I don't go above and try to do anything in the town. I don't try to represent anybody or this whole board, and even I am the chair and I don't represent this board.
Can I ask?
Okay,
Are you done?
so moving forward, that's my explanation for
Okay,
what I
appreciate
talked
that.
about.
Let me
So,
stop.
and literally, I'm gonna talk about this for about another 3 minutes for your rebuttal, and then we're done.
a minute and that.
So have at it.
How long have you been doing this?
It doesn't matter.
Okay,
Irrelevant.
that's fine.
What's the
That's-
point?
that's
What
fine.
relevancy?
The point you're telling me, that
Relevancy.
you know what I should be doing on the ZBA. First of all,
Okay,
I'm gonna
opinion,
stop the
opinion.
counter.
Okay,
Opinion.
lower the voice.
Opinion.
Yours is an opinion.
Oh,
I
okay.
never said anything that I was on the ZBA.
It's documented in the complaint.
Yeah, I saw that. Who taped it?
Huh?
Who taped it? You had 25 people around.
Who taped what? I didn't
You
tape
taped
anything.
everything. You guys.
Did I
We
tape
have
anything?
an AO, that's her job, it's not your job, and it's not your
Yeah,
job.
I disagree.
You're stepping outside of your
I
lane.
disagree.
He
So,
is
period.
absolutely
I
right.
So again,
He's
I don't
wrong.
really want, I'm addressing
And
Lower
I
the
can give
voice.
you the
my-
statute right here that says as a ZBA member, I came to the select board and the AO and said, have the proper permits been taken because I was asked by a citizen. I went through the procedure, said, we don't know, we don't have any idea, we don't know what's going on. I said, okay, I'll take it to the next step. I'll give you the paperwork that says a ZBA member acts independently. It doesn't go to a board, it doesn't have a meeting to do this stuff. It's your job and my job to make sure the proper permits are gotten in this town.
No, it's not a TAO.
You know what's gonna end up happening? Okay,
I'll
listen,
finish it.
I've addressed your question.
Yes,
I gave you specifics. Okay, I didn't give you any opinions. I gave you specifics.
Can I just say
Okay.
I have
It-
specifics here?
I don't know what you have.
I'm gonna give it to
You've got a minute.
you. No, I'm gonna, go ahead. have them in, I'll put the stuff and give it to you, and you see.
Great.
I went down because I was just out of all this and hearing everything and anyone talking about what's going on. I did the same thing when I worked with Bill Levine and he wanted to put gas pumps in, so that I understand where I am.
Then call the board, talk about it at the board.
What
Because-
It's not any board, ZBA.
What board?
Talk about your
the
ZBA
board
meeting.
ladies were down there,
CBA is obligated by
You
the
were
law
down
to
there
get
for
the
some
facts
exercise,
before they have
and
a
I
meeting.
know they
So-
called.
So what
Military.
I'm saying is,
Picking
so
up.
you're gonna go down and be confrontational, you're gonna show up, be confrontational,
You
and
called
then,
me over.
No.
I didn't call you
Yes,
over,
you did.
out of
Knock
your
it off, both of
mind.
you.
You're out of your
Out
mind.
of your
You
mind.
called
I
me
was
over.
there.
And
Done.
furthermore, you told
Done.
me in town.
No, no, I told you,
Okay?
you bet me.
That's enough out of you,
You got me.
both of you.
I'll give it to you. I told you, because you made a statement,
Yeah.
and this is seriously it.
Yeah.
You made a statement that I tore down my house without the proper permits.
Right.
And I said to you, did you happen to read the 27 pages of emails that I sent between me, Deb, and the River Commission? No, you didn't, because I know you didn't. Okay, in there, it says that I am exempt. I said to you, I bet you that if I'm right, and you said, I'll bet you $1,000, and I said, nope, I'll bet you if I'm right, you leave town. And you said, I'm not doing that.
Do you have a
because-
copy of the things he's saying?
That's cool, it doesn't
Do you have a
matter.
copy? Does the town have a copy?
Listen, why am I gonna hide that?
I have a
I'm not
motion.
hiding
I
I
have
was
a motion.
there.
I have a motion.
I was
to
there,
make.
that
I'm
was
not
it.
hiding anything.
I have a
I'm
Okay,
motion.
I'm on private
So-
property.
I have a motion to make
Here's the tallest one.
that this board make a recommendation
There is no recommendation for anything.
to the select board,
It's already been made.
Sorry, man.
not about the sign,
And it's not all the time.
but about members from our board that are stepping outside of their lane, because I believe it's the AO's decision, and I'm sure the select board is gonna agree
I've
with that.
addressed it with the select board, it's in their hands.
Thank you. I agree with that.
So we can't do
For me?
anything about these
I-
people on our
I-
board, like going over getting landowners.
Listen, we
or-
have
Go
our,
over one place sometimes,
Yeah,
right now.
nobody's going over there as a planning commission. Nobody's going
You
over
don't
there.
have any,
alright, folks,
as a private,
Stop
So,
telling me what I can do and I can't.
we have no
you can't
more
step
to
on
talk.
people's private
No, no,
property.
I-
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a nice night.